Web forms, master pages, themes, and pages. In this nugget, we're going to get started by talking about some of the basics of web forms, including configuration. We'll look at page directives and web.config. I'll show you where to add the HTML doc type to a page, how to create and apply themes, including how to change them dynamically or programmatically at runtime, where to put content placeholders and what they look like, and how to do nested master pages. Now, before we really get going, let's just cover some of the background concepts and words, especially the ones that are going to apply to this nugget. ASP.NET is a framework. It's part of the .NET framework, and it's designed for creating applications that run on a web server. Now, the portion we're really going to focus on in this nugget is the page framework, or the page and controls framework, as Microsoft calls it. The idea is that an ASP.NET web page can be requested from any browser or client device, and ASP.NET on the server renders the actual markup language, which will often be HTML, to the requesting browser. So you can create a single page that works across multiple browsers because ASP.NET takes care of the appropriate markup for whichever browser happens to be making each individual request. Now, you can obviously target a particular web page for a specific browser to take advantage of specific features of that browser, although you're sort of killing the idea of cross-compatibility at that point. Now, ASP web pages themselves are completely object-oriented. So you can work with HTML elements using properties, methods, and events, just as you would with any other object. So the idea behind the page framework is to remove the implementation details of separating the client and server that is normally inherent to a web-based application, and it does that by giving you a unified model for responding to client events in the code that runs on the server. The framework helps you do things like maintain the state of a page so that when a user submits a form, you remember who they were. If you need to send back an error message, you can repopulate the form with all the things that they had already filled out and display your error message. So it helps you maintain all of that. It enables you to encapsulate a lot of common UI functionality and reusable controls so that you can write something once and then use it again across many different types of pages. The look and feel of the website is applied via themes and skins, so you can define those and then apply them at different levels, which is something that we're going to talk about in this nugget, to customize the look and feel of your application. You can also define something called a master page, and that allows you to create a consistent layout for your pages. If you look at this example here, I've started a basic web application project in Visual Studio, and it's set things up in such a way that I have a header which says My ASP.NET Application. I've got a little menu with a Home and About button, and then I've got a content area, and that sort of thing can be created through a master page so that all the pages in your application can have a layout that kind of is consistent and matches up. And if you need to change that layout, you just change it in the master page and it automatically reapplies it to everything in your application. So in this nugget then, we're going to focus on master pages, configuration, themes, and individual pages. Now we've got to start somewhere, and I choose to start with configuration. All of ASP.NET's configuration starts in the web config file. Now this lives at the root of your web's solution folder, which means it's going to be at the root of the website that is a result of this. And you can simply edit it. Well, I mean, you could pop it open in Notepad if you wanted to, but we're just going to open it here in Visual Studio. This is an XML file, and it contains all the top-level configuration items for everything running under this website. So you can configure things like connection strings that are going to be used across this. You can configure whether or not you're in debug mode, different compilation options, target a specific version of the framework. You can set up the authentication mode. Oh, and that's something we're going to be talking about, I think, in like nugget number 13, yeah. Membership we'll be talking about as well. You can create profile, role manager information. So all of this stuff is the things that apply to the entire website. Now, when you first have someone visit your web page, your web application will start. ASP.NET will read this web configuration file, and it will construct all the configuration information it needs in memory. and it will cache it there, and it won't need to read it from the file every time. It is smart enough, though, to detect any changes you make to this file, and whenever you do, it will dump that cached information from memory and reread all of this from disk and reconstruct it. So all you need to do to make a configuration change is change this file and save it. You don't need to restart the website or reboot the server or anything like that. Now, up within the system.web section, you can create a configuration section for your pages. And this is something that's going to apply to all of the different pages that run on your site. And there's a few different settings, and you can see them here: async timeout, auto event wire up, and so forth. There's a couple of key ones that I kind of want to focus on. One of them is down here on view state encryption mode. You can set to always, auto, or never. Now, the view state is something that we'll kind of be playing with a little bit later in managing state. In fact, we have an entire nugget for that someplace. The idea is that whenever you need, the user is going to fill out something on a form, you might have to pass that back to them. There might also be data that you want to keep track of, like a user ID or something, and all of that is the view state. And there's a couple of different ways that that can be encoded into the web page, and always or auto will take care of that. Always will encrypt it for you. Auto will encrypt it when the system needs to. Never will always leave it in clear text. The downside of leaving it in clear text, of course, is it makes it easy for someone to modify it on their client before they ship it back to your server, and potentially, well, I mean, potentially spoof different things, but even potentially cause bugs and errors and things like that. So you definitely want to be a little bit careful of that. The one right above it, validate requests, is either set to true or false, and it indicates whether or not ASP.NET examines all of the input from the browser for potentially dangerous data. And that's a good idea. That means ASP.NET is going to do some of your work for you. So if you set it to true, it will do request validation by comparing all input data to a list that it has of potentially dangerous values. And if a match occurs, meaning it sees a potentially dangerous value, it will raise an exception. The default on that one is true. Now, there's another one in here. I think it's up, let's see, I'm trying to think. Well, here's where you can specify your default theme. That was something I was going to look for in just a sec. Up at the top, Client ID mode. So Client ID mode is designed to specify the algorithm that ASP.NET uses to generate Client ID values for controls. So the default value is predictable. The default value for controls is to inherit. So the default algorithm for all controls on all pages is going to be determined by that. And there's a bunch of different settings that you can do with. A different default value can be set on a per page basis or on a per control basis. But if you're setting it here in this web config file, you're setting it for every single page. So let's talk a little bit about what some of the different versions are. There's really four. Inherit means you inherit the setting from your parent control. Now that's not really valid here in the web config file because this is the ultimate parent for everything. Auto ID means the client ID value is generated by concatenating the ID values of each parent naming container with the ID value of the control. Predictable is a different algorithm. And that's what you usually use for data-bound controls. It means the client ID is generated by concatenating the client ID value of the parent naming container with the ID value of the control. And then there's also static, which simply means that you get to set it to a static value. And you should definitely read up on the documentation to, understand the different situations and scenarios in which you might want to use some of these. Now, the last one I want to point out is called master page file. This is not one you probably are always going to set here in web config. What it does is it specifies the master page path that an individual page should be using. Pages that have that set to true must contain a content control as well as a top level control. And so you would typically set this within a page itself. In fact, let's take a look at that. Flipping back over to my web page here, I'm going to view its HTML source. And you'll see that I've got a bunch of page directives. So this bracket % starts some ASP.NET code that's in the web page itself. Page says I'm making a directive for this page, and I can set things like title, its language. Here's that master page file. So I'm telling it this page to use this master page file, site.master. You'll see that over here in my Solution Explorer, site.master. Other things like auto event wire up, code behind were specified. So the actual content of this page is just here. And remember what I said. A page that has a master page file attribute must contain a content control as the top level control. And there it is, the content control. So what will happen is ASP will take this content, stick it into the appropriate area of this site.master, and that's how it will assemble the entire completed page out of it. So a lot of these different attributes you'll want to set at the page level because it allows you the flexibility of, well, having different master pages for different portions of your web application if you need to. Now that master page has got some more important stuff we need to look at, so let's pop it open. You can see here that it really looks the same as our web page. Go back to the design mode here. The difference is that our content got put in here. Now notice as I hover over portions of this default that I get the little no symbol. Well, that means I'm moving over a portion of the page that's defined in the master, and that icon is telling me that I can't edit it here. I can only edit the stuff that comes from this page, which is inside of this content. If I want to edit this stuff, I move over to the master. And this is where I can change it. And changing it here in the master and saving it will automatically change it in all the pages that use that master. So in the source here, a couple of important things are happening. One is I'm declaring a doc type for my page. This is being declared as XHTML 1.0 strict, which is a stricter version of HTML that requires a little bit more paying attention to the structure of the page. So that doc type declaration is important. Actually for a couple of reasons. Number one, that is transmitted to browsers, and it helps browsers understand how to read the remainder of the HTML on the page. It's also a cue to Visual Studio to tell it how to help you lay out the page correctly and how to call your attention to any errors that you might have made that conflict with this particular standard. Now, the big thing that happens in the site master, we've got, here's our header, which is in an H1, and we've got all kinds of that fun stuff. But the big thing is the content placeholder, and that's right here. So this is a single control. It is of the type content placeholder. We've given it the ID main content, and this tells ASP.NET where the individual page content is going to get stuck in. So when it takes the site master page and it takes this default content here, let's go back to the source, and it takes this content, it takes that content and sticks it into the content placeholder. So this tells it where that information is going to be stuck into the page. So that's kind of how all these different things fit together. So your master can be as complicated as you want, and anything that's going to repeat from page to page to page should be in here. And then your individual pages just have to have the content that's unique to that page. You can actually get pretty complex with these masters. Think of a site where you're always going to have the same header, but you want a different menu or maybe a different sidebar for different areas of the site. Well, there is a trick called nested master pages. So let's say that this one I'm looking at is my main top level master page. It is going to look pretty much like this. It's going to have a content placeholder. I would then create a page with a .master file name extension, just like this one. It would pretty much be laid out just like a content page like this one. It's going to have a content control, and that will get mapped into the content placeholder for the parent master. In addition, though, it can have additional content placeholders of its own so that all of these things get stacked together. So the parent, the child, and the content page all gets munged together to create the final page. And what you would do in your content pages is here for master page file, you would reference the child page, the page content gets merged into the child page. The child master page references the parent master page, and so everything gets merged into that, and it kind of works up a little hierarchy like that. And you can do those as, as deeply nested as you need them to be to accomplish whatever view that you need to work. Now, from a programming standpoint, if a user requests default.aspx, that's the top level container. The master page gets merged into that, and that can, because of the master word, it can kind of seem a little counterintuitive. It might seem like the master is the top level object and it sucks in the default page because that's what was requested, but in reality the default page becomes the top level container and the master page content gets pulled into that and kind of wrapped around the content. So in the way ASP.NET actually puts this together is a little bit seemingly backwards, at least to me, of how it works in theory, but that is the way it works. And that means that any control in the master page is available within this content page because it is all part of this entire content page. Now, themes are never applied to master files. Themes are always applied to an individual page, and because that contains the master file, then the theme will affect whatever was in the master page as well. So a theme is several different things sort of combined together. A theme is a combination of a skin, one or more cascading style sheets, images, and potentially other resources. At minimum, a theme has to contain a skin. And these things are put into a special directory. I've opened it up here, app themes, skin1, and you would give this a name, not just skin1. You'll notice that the skin file ends in a .skin. And what goes into here is simply a description of how different controls are supposed to be drawn. So it looks just like adding a regular control, like an ASP.NET button. We're going to say this one runs at the server, but we can apply attributes to its appearance. Like that. And by applying this skin to our site, all of our buttons that don't have a locally applied style will pick up this type of a style. So you create the skin files in that theme folder that I showed you. You can have one or more control skins in a given skin file for one or more control types. You can define skins in a separate file if you want to, or put all of them into a single file. This is a skin, and it is all contained in a skin file. Now, if I were to drop a CSS file, a cascading style sheet file, into this skin folder, in fact, let's do that. Let's add a new item, and let's add a, oops, you know what, I probably already have some styles. Right there. So the deal is I can put this into my theme folder. I can move this up here, and that will automatically add that to that theme. And so the CSS can define a lot of things like these colors and so forth. And rather than defining them here, I would use a style perhaps, or a, more likely, if I'm using a CSS file, I would use a class and say that this is a class myButton. And then in the CSS file, myButton would be defined with whatever colors and visual appearances I want to. So you can sort of put all these things together to create a theme. And there's a couple of ways that you can apply that theme to your website. Once you've created it, you could come in here to web.config, and under system.web in the pages section, you could specify the theme, and that would specify it for the entire application. And if you're going to have a theme that's application-wide, then that's a good place to put it. Within an individual page, you can also specify a theme, and when you do so, it will only take effect for this page, and I'm specifying the theme called Skin1. So that'll automatically force that to take effect for just this page. So you can specify it in whatever way you like. Global themes are often more common because you don't have to specify them on a per page basis. What I typically do is I'll come up with one theme for the entire site. And then if I've got another section of the site, maybe an admin section or a members only section, and it needs to have a slightly different theme for some reason, I can apply that at the page level for just those pages. And once applied at the page level, it'll override what was done at the global level. Now you can also change themes programmatically. Let's say you're going to allow your users to select a theme from a drop-down list box, and you want to then be able to have that happen. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch back to the design mode. I'm going to stick from my toolbox a button into here. And then I'm going to double click on that to get into the code behind file. So this is what will happen when someone clicks this button. And all I would do is I would access the built-in page object and change the theme property to whatever I wanted it to be. So you could have a big if-then statement, or a select case or switch if it were C#. What theme did the person select from the drop-down list box, and then change the theme to that, and it will automatically change it. So that's a really, really kind of cool little technique. You can also change just the style sheet programmatically. That's a little bit more difficult. What you have to do is override the page's style sheet theme property. So what you would do is something down in here. Public overrides property, and then it's let's see, style sheet theme. See if it puts the string, and it puts the whole thing in for me. And so then for the get and the set, you would just change that. So instead of returning my basis style sheet theme, I would return blue theme, and that's going to change the CSS. And you can do something similar to change control specific skins programmatically as well. So you get a lot of flexibility to change this stuff programmatically as well as declaratively at design time. So in this nugget, we've looked at master pages, themes, and pages. I showed you how to put in page directives, and I showed you where web config goes and why you might want to put global settings in there. Showed you where to do the HTML doc type in your pages and talked about why that's important. And talked about how to create and apply themes, including how to apply them programmatically at runtime. We looked at content placeholders, what they do and where they go and what they look like, and we talked about how to build nested master pages. I hope this has been informative for you.